Monster Professor.
Welcome to The Monster Professor, a show in which we discuss and explore monsters in literature, myth, film, games, folklore, culture, and beyond. I'm your host, Josh Woods, author, editor, professor, and monster expert, and today I have a special treat. It's a conversation with Mac Kelly of Wolfman Mac Chiller Drive-In. Wolfman Mac Chiller Drive-In was a horror show in which Wolfman Mac was one of these horror hosts who would show these retro horror films and monster films. And in between the segments of the film, he would do his own segments with his crew, including Boney Bob, among others, this little shyster skeleton who was always getting into scams and hijinks, while Wolfman Mac was just trying to keep the film running for the drive-in. And it was set in this world called Huntington Heights. In case you can't tell already by my enthusiasm, and you're going to hear it many times over, I was a huge fan of this thing when I first found it syndicated on Retro Television Network. Late one summer night. And so it's a huge honor to get to talk to Mac Kelly, who has a lot of experience not only in the radio world and in broadcasting world, but a whole lot of experience with monsters. He is one himself, Wolfman Mac, and Halloween. And so it was a real pleasure to have this conversation with him, and also a pleasure to get to share it with you. I'm a Monster Professor. So, without further ado, here's my conversation with Wolfman Mac Kelly. Well, officially, thank you so much for coming on The Monster Professor. I'm a huge fan, as I've told you several times before, and it's just a real honor to have you on the podcast, Wolfman Mac Kelly.
Thanks, Josh. I appreciate it. I appreciate you, and thank you for having me on here. Your YouTube channel is intriguing. What got you into the whole monster thing? Tell me about you.
Well, I was about to ask the same thing to you, but yeah, I'll answer first. I'm not really sure when it started, except for all of us, I guess, in childhood, it must have, because I can't remember a time when I wasn't in love with monsters, and I was always getting in trouble in school for drawing monsters or writing about monsters when I was supposed to be doing something else, and then I would just argue with the teachers about why monsters actually mattered, and so that is essentially what I've been doing recently. It started with a series of lectures that I was giving about monsters in literature, just trying to find out if anyone else cared about them like I do, and it turns out a lot of people did. And so I just started recording some of them, and then it just kind of went from there. So it's about a little under a year for the podcast, although my fiction writing for many years has been about monsters. So that's kind of my story on it.
That's intriguing. Are you published?
Yeah, I've got now I plugged my books plenty on my own podcast, so I won't spend too much time on it. But yeah, I've got a novel out called The Black Palace. It's about witches in the modern world, and then a book of short stories that just came out called Oh Monstrous World, both available on Amazon, among other places. About
that's
you.
Really cool.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying. No, that's really cool. I'm just really intrigued. It's always nice to, I enjoy learning about people who, share a likeness for some of the darker side of life. I find a little bit of comfort in it. I find light in the darker side of life. Sometimes it can be a little humorous and freeing and relaxing, and it's just it's kind of a cool way to let go. Now, when you as far as like when you talk about monsters, what's your are you into horror in the slash gore kind of way? Or are you kind of a little bit more about the story? What's your take?
Yeah, well, I'm not against the slasher type or anything like that, but personally, when I get the chance to read about it, write about it, watch movies, I really enjoy the mythological and the atmospheric, and so I guess I would be more on the story side of it. Yeah. But I'm into horror films and all sorts of monster films, books as well, even in video games, everything. It's just, I don't know what it is about monsters, and I'm gonna pick your brain on it some more, but I think you're really onto something when you're like that darker side. The darker side of things is both freeing and comforting in a strange way.
Yeah.
Well, I have to share with you and our listeners some of my first experiences with Wolfman Mac Chiller Drive-In. So,
okay, all right.
It was a late one summer night years back, and just got done grilling on the patio and drinking some beers and having a good time, and turned on retro. I think it was retro TV.
Yeah, retro television. Right?
Yeah, retro television. Yeah, right after, I believe at the time it was the original Battlestar Galactica, and just sitting down watching this, and then something else came on, and there's this cartoon of the moon and the trees, and then I hear do 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 do. Do. And then there's this cartoon Wolfman running across. I'm like, what in the hell is this amazing thing? And then this Chiller Drive-In came up, and then I got Halloween in the middle of the summer. I got this horror TV show, the classic horror host TV show of Wolfman Mac Kelly and Boney Bob in this drive-in in Huntington Heights, and they were inviting me to watch these retro horror movies with them, and I'm just screaming and jumping up and down going, this is amazing. Where's this stuff been, and why all of a sudden do I get Halloween in the middle of the summer? And then every Saturday night for at least a year, my wife and I would plan our Saturday nights around Wolfman Mac. Like nothing could interfere with our Wolfman Mac time. We couldn't get enough.
That's fantastic. Wow, thank you.
So what got you into monsters, into the horror TV hosting? Where did your love for it begin?
I just had this natural love for Halloween in general, and I was the weird kid that would wear, shirt that said Happy Halloween on it or something like that. And during later in the school year when it wasn't Halloween, we had a couple of 3 horror hosts here in the Detroit area. One of them was Sir Graves Ghastly, who was portrayed by Lawson Deming. And if you look Lawson Deming up, he did radio shows back in the 40s and what have you, and then there was a gentleman named Ron Swede who just passed away actually about 6-7 weeks ago, and he was the Ghoul. And then there was Tom Ryan, who was a local radio host here in the Detroit area for a long time, in the 70s and 80s, and even part of the 90s, and he played a character named Count Scary. All 3 of the characters were very different. The Ghoul was blowing up the M80s in the studio at a very freestyle. He was so cool. He was, was on on Channel 20 at midnight. I think it was every Saturday night, as part of my memory recalls. And so I would sneak to the living room. Everybody would be asleep, and I'd feel like I'm doing something naughty. No, I'm watching the Ghoul, and he's blowing up all these firecrackers and blowing up the Froggy, and then he's showing all these cool everything from Godzilla to the Vincent Price. I mean, whatever. Oh my God! I just thought that was the coolest thing. And then you had Count Scary that was on Saturday afternoons. And, Sir Graves Ghastly. And he was also goofy, but a little more of that, what you would imagine from a horror host. He had all the sounds and, of the wolves howling and the chains rattling and the ghosts. Ooh. And his gates would open up and zoom in on the moon, and you could hear him from inside his coffin. Yeah. And so then there was that, and then you had Count Scary, and he was all camp. This loopy, almost Bozo the Clown-ish vampire, if you can imagine. And so I just fell in love. I couldn't get enough of it. And at Christmas time, all the kids wanted to know where Santa Claus was. I wanted to know where Sir Graves Ghastly was going to be appearing next, and how bummed I was that he wouldn't do anything else, outside of Halloween, to the best of my knowledge. But I remember telling my parents, I said, that's what I want to be. This is what I want to do. And I'm trying to shorten my story a little bit here for you, give you a Reader's Digest. So now we grow up. I'm an adult, and I did radio for 30 years from, I think from like 1984, right on about 30, 31 years. I was doing radio in Saginaw, Michigan, and Bay 3 TV was showing all of the old House on Haunted Hill.
Yeah.
And Plan 9 from Outer Space. So I called them and I said, you guys need a host. And they said, well, come on down, but we can't pay you. I said, I don't care. So for a little while there, I showed up and I hosted the movies as Mac Kelly from 97.3 Joe FM. Listen to me every afternoon, blah, blah, blah. But here's, this movie. And at the time it was MySpace. My MySpace lit up and I was getting friended by all these people on MySpace, and people were calling the radio station going, oh my God, we got to do more of this. And I was sitting at a Big Boy and I was thinking, I need a character, but I didn't want to do the over accented vampire or the kooky, mad scientist. I didn't want to do any of that. And I thought, I've always loved werewolves. And so I figured, well, there was a Wolfman Jack. He was a very popular radio host in the 50s, 60s, part of the 70s. His name wasn't actually Wolfman Jack. It was Robert. Trying to remember his last name now. I'm not going to cheat. I turned my phone off so we don't get. Let me try and turn it back on so I can look this up. All right, it's back on, but I'm not going to look at it right now. And so I thought, well, why not Wolfman Mac? Well, Wolfman Jack wasn't a werewolf character, and Jack wasn't his real name. My name is Mac, and I'm playing a werewolf character. And so I thought I got to do the werewolf thing. So I got all the makeup at a party supply thing, and I showed up to where we were taping the shows for Bay 3 TV. And I put on the makeup, and I created this awful-looking werewolf. and then it was like, oh, my God, now we got to go into the Detroit market. And I put it on all the public access shows, and then we were on Channel 20 for a few months, maybe half a year. And then we ended up nationally syndicated on the Retro Television Network for several years. And that's where we enjoyed our run. I'm trying to think. Did I not answer the question, though? What got me into it? So anyway, just an overall love for Halloween and horror hosts in general. And and if I could, but I've taken a lot of the stuff down in my bedroom because I could say I want to paint. I'm decorated all the time for Halloween.
Yeah.
All of it.
Yeah, our house is kind of like that, like skulls and monsters and figurines everywhere you go. And we've got Halloween running year round because we should at least have 2 or 3 Halloweens per year. It's a shame we only have one, but Chiller Drive-In was my secondary Halloween.
Oh, I appreciate that, and that's really the goal as we go back into production now next month. Well, we're actually already in production, but I'm not on until next month in front of the camera. But that I want to have Halloween on TV all year round.
Yeah.
We have our sights set on somewhere locally. As far as everybody else, at the moment, we're going to do something so everybody can see it online. But finding a network to take us in is really, it's more difficult than you can imagine.
Well, that's another thing I wanted to get to as well. I was one of my agendas on having you on here was to beg you to get it going again. And then I found out what a coincidence, you've already got it going again. So it was purely coincidental on my begging you to be on the show and finding out that you've already got it going. So maybe I can ask you this: what in the world can we look for? How can we support it, fans of the show or listeners of this show who want to be fans of the new version? What should we be on the lookout for? Or how can we support it?
Wow. Well, when it comes out, I guess just watch it. And I imagine the production company that I have is going to have merch and what have you. The gist of the show is what you might expect from a horror host. It's a werewolf, our thing with Chiller Drive-In. And at first it was named Nightmare Cinema. I changed Nightmare Cinema. It was SINEMA because I was told that if I ever wanted to promote it in the Bible Belt, I shouldn't have anything that had sin on it. and I wish I would have, just kind of stuck to my guns and tell them to lump it. But, so I changed the name to Chiller Drive-In and it worked out. So it was about a werewolf that owns a haunted drive-in with a smart alecky skeleton named Boney Bob. And, so I do all the, with Boney Bob, I gotta, he's always trying to get a buck out of everybody.
He's always swindling everybody, calling you a flea bag.
Oh, yes.
Where did Boney Bob come from?
Yes, exactly. So, Boney Bob was on my front porch for a long time, and he just was a Halloween decoration. I can't remember which one of my daughters suggested I use him. Bring him on the show. I thought, I don't want to have a puppet, But I did. I brought Boney Bob to one of the first tapings that we did on broadcast television when we got out of public access. And ever since then, Boney Bob is really the star. Boney Bob is supposed to be the sidekick, but as it turns out, I'm very much the sidekick. Everybody else is just a side player. Boney Bob is it. And
he's the troublemaker, and they so often get the story rolling. Wolfman Mac ends up getting into all sorts of hijinks, just trying to get himself out of problems. That Boney Bob
there really is, and you can look up if you look up Wolfman Mac MAC, Wolfman Mac's full episodes. If you just YouTube that, there's a handful of full episodes up on YouTube. It's non-monetized because during that entire time, the show actually didn't really make any money. And we were all volunteers, and I kept thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be like, we're going to turn this into this giant conglomeration, and we're going to be huge and make all this money, and it just never happened. And I think if you want to be rich, don't ever become a horror host. Because even moving forward, even though the production company is actually working out a way for us to be paid, money is not my motivation.
Yeah.
Not in any way whatsoever. I mean, I've got other things that I'm doing that I'm earning an income on, but I don't look to this to make money. I'm kind of off topic, and I apologize. I got to talking, and I don't mean to monopolize the conversation. But
well, no,
so
I think a lot of people listening to this are also interested in that kind of thing. Like, how do I get into doing what I love, and should I be worrying about making money while doing what I love, or that kind of thing? And so, another question I was planning on asking you, and you've already kind of started sliding in some good answers to it, is like, what kind of advice do you have for somebody who wants to just give a shot at something? Somebody who's always loved, horror host TV. It sounds like you just called them up and told them that you're going to do it. And so, So I think this kind of advice is really cool for listeners and for me.
Well, see, here's the good news is that if you have public access and you want to be on actual television, you've got, because you're a citizen of whatever county you're in and you've got public access there, you probably will pay like $75 a year, but you can air a television show. You might have to take a little bit of a class on how to work a camera and everything, but it's all worth it. And you can have a public access show. Now, I am completely against starving artists. And the way that we watch programming now is we have Netflix and Hulu and everything else, and we've got YouTube, and YouTube is now creating content and taking content in. No one should be ashamed, and I'm certainly not ashamed of saying that if you're going to do what you love, there's no harm in saying that you want to earn an income on it. And please buy these T-shirts from us, or please, whatever, sponsor our show. Or there's no harm in that whatsoever. But I've learned along the way that, especially if you're going to have, if you want to have a YouTube channel, there's a way that you can monetize that. And I can either share that with you now, and maybe your listeners might benefit from it too, or I can share it with you privately if you want. It's up to you. But I've found some ways that as I create a different channel that I want to do just for Boney Bob, I found some ways that you can earn some money.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, absolutely. And I think, and I'm really excited about like the resurrection of this kind of project, especially now that the medium has changed so much since I think Chiller Drive-In first started going, where now it seems to me that you're not so kind of limited by only television. There's so many more possibilities. I mean, hell, I've been wanting a Wolfman Macs Chiller Drive-In video game, kind of like the old game Zombies Ate My Neighbors kind of thing, or
No, we've already thought about that, and we just never did it,
Yeah. Well, if you don't mind my getting back to one point that you brought up, you chose the Wolfman character out of all the characters. You grew up with vampires, and I'm sure the Frankenstein character, and you had horror shows hosts like the Ghoul, and you went Wolfman, and you've always been intrigued by werewolves. And so what about it? What about werewolves or the Wolfman is so appealing, not only to you, but it's appealing to all sorts of cultures and throughout time. So what's the appeal?
The appeal is that there's a few things. Lon Chaney's Wolfman character, which is actually going to be kind of part of sort of my new look for the new show. We're not going to call it Chiller Drive-In. It'll be called The Monster Show. And there's reasons for that that'll evolve when we're doing this. But the werewolf, I've always thought, was just, he had the ability to be both an empathetic human being, which when you look at Larry Talbot, he's a very remorseful, empathetic, kind man.
Yeah.
And then you have that dark side that we all have. And there's a sense of coolness in that. There's that, you know, the combination of the nice guy and the bad boy, all kind of, in the one mix. And that's appealing to me.
Yeah, I
what
mean
else?
that wolf thing adds a lot of that. Well, as you're saying, like that bad boy kind of, that hot-blooded hunger kind of attitude that you don't necessarily get out of, say, being a zombie or being a Frankenstein creation. It seems.
Right, or even a vampire for all that matter. They pretty much have that one side. But one of the things that I've always liked about the allure of the Wolfman is that the Wolfman has the ability to kind of live in between both worlds and make them both kind of mesh together. And I like that. I think I've always thought that was really cool. And so that's always been the draw to that. But I have a love for all things, all the Universal black and white monster movies. I love those, all of them.
Yeah. And so those monster movies, it seems to me that they really hold up. Like, even when they weren't that good to begin with, they stay entertaining. I mean, one of the things that got me so hooked on your show was that when, your skits in between the movie were adorable and just gave me everything I've ever wanted out of Halloween. Takes me right back to being a kid, and I loved all of that. But when the movie came on, and you would do some hilarious stuff with it, by the way, the googly eyes, and then or you have the big monster, like the ape monster about to attack somebody, but it's like this really long drawn out scene in the real movie, so you'd speed it up, kind of Benny Hill style.
So I got to give props to our graphic artist, and editor that is, and he's still a friend of mine, Steve. And Steve, I hope I don't butcher your name, Chepyavsky. We call him Steve C. But he's so god dang talented, and he was the one that added all of the silly little graphics and the sound effects and the music, and that was all his stuff.
Well, it really adds to it, and it's hilarious. But on top of that, the movies themselves, and I'm thinking of a couple of my favorites of your episodes. One of them, The Screaming Skull, where that guy tries to drive his wife crazy in this kind of like Rebecca type of story, kind of a gothic with the painting of the former wife thing. And then The Brain That Wouldn't Die. I think I've watched your episodes of those two movies at least 3 times each.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
And the thing is, those movies are just by themselves also hold up, and they're not great movies, but they're great movies. And so people, I don't know of people like going back and watching like the bad 1950s dramas or the bad 1950s crime movies. They'll watch the good ones. A few of them remain. But when it comes to like these horror movies or these monster sci-fi movies, they stay entertaining. Why is that? Why do we love this so much?
Well, I can only answer for me. Part of it is because, of course we all romance and long for a better time. And part of that too is because people who left the theater watching those, and this was all so new to them, and they really honestly felt like there was some sort of plausibility to some of these films. Like, what if, oh my gosh, what if there was a spaceship that landed here, and that might be like that, and there's always just that fascination with that, and then we also. We love being scared. And it mixes up the monotony of waking up in the morning, go to your job, go home, have the same thing for dinner you've probably been eating for the last 10 years, and you go to bed. And those types of films really break that up, and you get that little scare, that innocence of the scare, that just kind of mixes things up. For me, that's my answer. And, I think if you asked 100 people, they might have 100 different answers, so.
Yeah, it really does do that. I'm thinking back in a moment in my life where I was working a job that I hated and things were mundane in my life, and then move into this apartment in the top of this old, otherwise abandoned house. And I was suddenly convinced that it was haunted for a few things happening around the house. And I was terrified day in and day out. And my life stopped being boring real fast. And I just wanted it to go back to being boring until it was. And then I missed the ghost.
Sure.
It really wakes you back up, doesn't it?
Oh, that's really cool. I'd like to hear your ghost story sometime.
Well, it was mostly sounds, really. I mean, the bizarre sounds like a piano playing in the house, even though there was no piano anywhere in the house, or suddenly glass breaking really loudly in the other room. And, in the middle of the night, we run in there to find out what has broken, and nothing in the whole house. And it just kept being stuff like that for a while.
And that's the stuff right there that made The Ghost and Mr. Chicken one of the most awesome classic Halloween movies out there.
Oh my God, that really was.
Without the scare and the gore and all that stuff, but that's the kind of silly things that made that movie so hot, because that's how many people have experienced that. It's been a lot.
Yeah.
So, and again, there's that plausibility.
Yeah, you're right. That is. And taking it back to, as you were saying, like taking it back to kind of a better era and a better time. There's something about your choices that seem to fit together so well too, when you did the Wolfman character and you mixed him with like the rockabilly 1950s drive-in. And so what about that kind of appeals to you? Or
Ever since the Stray Cats came out when I was in high school, I've been fascinated with rockabilly.
Yeah.
I just love it. It really does. It's that whole rockabilly. If some of your listeners have never heard it, I mean, just put it on YouTube and maybe, but some of it is the Johnny Cash and oh, come on. Why are some of these names leaving my head so soon? But if you just look up some rockabilly, the Stray Cats are kind of watered down, but it really is. It harkens back to those old drive-in movie days, and the steamy windows, and it was the type of music that was popular in the 50s, but didn't get radio play because, man, some of them's lyrics were sinful. You listen to Elvis Presley's "One Night with You," and that is that's a dirty song, man. And so I've just always really been into that whole pinup rockabilly thing. And I'll love that until I die. And so I wanted to incorporate that into this. And I don't know how much of that is going to be involved with this new program that we're doing. We're still sticking to the same formula as a horror host, and campy and silly. But I don't know. I don't know how much of that we're interjecting into this one. But
yeah, well, I tell you, I think it was when you were signing off on every episode, and you would start giving us the rundown of what's going on in town around Huntington Heights, and
yes.
And every time you started getting into that, I would just get lost. I know you're a host in a studio, just on camera making this thing, but when you start narrating what's going on, the towns, the zombies are sweeping up the popcorn, and
the ghosts are closing the concession stands.
Yeah.
A little bit of fog just at the right amount, hovering over the graveyard.
See, it's doing it to me right now. I'm getting lost. It's
down those lights. Dig up a date to watch the movie with.
Yeah. Yeah, and the real world dissolves away from me, and I'm lost in there, and I want to live in Huntington Heights, man.
Well, then my work is done here. Yeah, it's we'll still have Huntington Heights, and we've got some other city names too, and but yeah, I want to kind of create, and a lot of all that's all ad lib stuff, just to kind of wanted, and I still do when people tune in. I want people to feel like they're watching a good old fashioned spook show.
Yeah.
And
so
the spook shows. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh, no, it's okay. I was just saying, a spook show back in the 50s, 40s, and 50s and 60s, you would have what we do on TV. You would have a horror host at a theater. And so if you were watching, I'll use House on Haunted Hill, when the skeleton, I apologize, I didn't turn my phone back off. When a skeleton would come out of the screen, a skeleton would actually drop from the ceiling.
Oh yeah,
and
yeah. Those
scare the bejesus out of people that were watching it in the theater, and they would start beating on the thing and pulling it down and stomping on it. And they aired the Tingler, and they put these things in the seats, the Vincent Price, the Tingler, and the Tingler would escape into the theater, and you would feel these puffs of air in the back of your heels, and oh my God, the Tingler's behind me, and women would scream and faint. And that's why I think, was it the Screaming Skull? I'll have to Google it again, but I think that was a movie where it was one of those movies anyway, where they said that if you died while watching that film, that they would pay for your funeral.
Oh yeah, yeah. And then Boney Bob worked that into a scam where he was trying to get money off of having
so
died.
He wanted to show that he was dead. Yeah. So, pretty sure that was the Screaming Skull. Sure.
I think so. And so that's that was an era when you were, and I'm sure it'd be highly illegal now to try anything like that, but that was an era when they were kind of mixing that movie with the haunted house kind of thing. Now, am I right in recalling that you were or are kind of involved with some like haunted attraction stuff, like Erebus or anything like that?
Well, the Erebus haunted attraction is right here in downtown Pontiac. I can actually see it out my living room window.
Oh, really?
It is won a few times in a row anyway. The Guinness record for being one of the largest walk-through haunted houses on the planet. And the entire time that I was taping the Chiller Drive-In show, we shot everything at that haunted house. And I'm still involved with those guys. And we'll still be doing part of our shooting of the new TV show there for B-roll. But for the most part, it's all going to be done on a real sound stage now in Troy, Michigan, at the Motion Picture Institute. It's a film school.
Yeah.
And so it'll all be shot there. And then I'm on the board of a theater in downtown Pontiac called Pontiac's Little Art Theater, and we've done some Wolfman things there already, where we show some of our old episodes there. I'm involved in several things like that. I mean, it's still cooking, and then also part of changing the name of Pontiac, Michigan, to Hauntiac in September and October.
Is that for real? Do you really do that?
Yeah, you can. I think it's Hauntiac.com. I'm pretty sure. And then, see, here, I don't know how things are where you live, but here, Halloween, it seems that pretty much everybody agrees, starts right around the second week of September. That's when all the haunted houses open, and the cider mills and pumpkin patches and everything. That's the second week of September is the Halloween season.
Oh man, because that's how it is in our house. But outside of our house, I don't think that's anywhere like that. Like people aren't, maybe it's belittling my area too much to say that they're not really into Halloween, but I'll say they're not into Halloween that much and not into it as much as it ought to be. So maybe I should head up to Pontiac this October.
Come see it. We'll be using that in the TV show too, Pontiac. But we have Halloween parades. Halloween festivals, and it's from September, be early September until first week of November.
Huh. So what is Halloween like in your household, or what's Halloween like if we get to spend it with Wolfman Mac?
The best Halloween you will ever have in your life. I've got. When you say Halloween music, right, everybody thinks Ghostbusters and, but there's so many great Halloween songs that are out there. Yeah, like Bert Convy did the Monster Hop, and I'm trying to think of, they were old TV, not game show hosts, but they had talk shows on TV. Merv Griffin had, Screaming Mimi's from Planet X, and then of course go into, Rob Zombie's awesome with Dracula and what have you, but there's so many musicians out there, especially here locally, that we've got the 3D Invisibles, and whatever they play at any time of the year, it's always that spooky theremin. Sound, and people just dig it. Halloween with me is hitting all of the haunted houses, doing all the pumpkin patches and the zombie paintball. And, it's just a riot. We've got a town in Romeo, Michigan. We've got a street. If you want to Google. It's called Tilson Street, Tillson, the Tilson Haunt or something. But the entire street, it's all old Victorian homes. And they do a fundraiser for kids. And every yard, if you look on the Tilson Haunt website, it's something like that. It's easy to find. Every yard has Halloween decorations up, but it's as if Disneyland and Universal Studios landed on Tilson Street and put up the displays. That's how amazing they are. There's like holograms, and it's just fascinating. And you get thousands of people walking up and down Tilson Street in Romeo, Michigan. And that's another town that probably celebrates Halloween all year round.
That's awesome. Okay, so now I've got to change my plans this fall. I got to find a way to be up there.
No kidding. Come on out. I'll show you. I'll show you guys a great time. Honestly, God, I'll get you into tons of haunted houses. It'll be a blast.
That's so awesome. Well, you've been extremely generous with your time, and it's been a real pleasure talking with you.
I'm grateful for the opportunity. Thank you for inviting me.
So, rather than take up any more of your holiday weekends, and you've been so grateful to share some of it with me, maybe I'll get to close with, is there anything else that anyone listening to this who wants to follow you, say on YouTube or other social media, or keep track of what you're up to? Is there anything that they should type in or look up in particular?
The Wolfman social media is kind of, it's, how you can go into your back office and you put it in hiding, you hide it. So it's all there, and it's all going to be coming back, but we have to figure out what the new look is going to be, the new feel and everything, because it's all the old Chiller Drive-In stuff. So that, no, but we will soon. You can, befriend me on Facebook if you just look up Mac Kelly. You know what you do is you put in Facebook.com, and then you follow that with the Tenacious Mac Kelly, and it's MacKelly. That's how you get to my Facebook page. But there's other Wolfman Facebook pages though that I have. They're just hiding. And then as far as YouTube, yeah, just go Wolfman Mac full episodes is what you can do, or Wolfman Mac clips, and there's a whole bunch of them up there.
Fantastic. Well, and as soon as the new production starts to get going, I'm going to keep plugging it here on this podcast and elsewhere as well, because as in case anyone can't tell, I've been trying to do my best not to gush too much or turn into too much of a fan of an embarrassing fan while I'm talking to you.
Well, it would be if you and Melissa decide to make your way here, this fall, for a weekend or whatever, we'll show you a good time. That's for sure. And I appreciate you, and I'm grateful for the opportunity, and thank you.
All right. Well, one final time, thank you so much, Wolfman Mac, and get back to having fun this Memorial Day weekend in Huntington Heights.
All right, friends, the zombies are sweeping up the popcorn. The ghosts are closing down the concession stands. And it looks like we're closing things down here at the old Chiller Drive-In. So keep those fangs sharp. Stay creepy. Ow!